welcome to By George, an 80 Players podcast here at the George Theater. I'm your host, Miranda Zapst, marketing associate, and my co-host today is Kat Hatcher, the general manager of the George.
Hi.
So happy to have you on today.
Thank you.
We're going to get into everything all George related.
Okay.
I first want to hear your story of what brought you to the George.
Okay.
How long you've been with us.
Sure.
I think it's a fascinating story. So we've talked about this before, and I have a couple of tangents that I'll probably take us on as we go down it.
Awesome. So I went to school at the University of St. Thomas, and it was my senior year. Wasn't super sure what I was going to do next. I had majored in history there and was like this close to getting a minor in theater. I wasn't able to complete the last few lab credits just because I hadn't started soon enough. But I'd been pretty active in their theater department there. And so I was up second floor, Jones Hall, and I saw a poster for our internship, for the 80 Players internship. And I thought, well, it's a year long, it's paid. It buys me some time to figure out, do I want to go to grad school? What do I want to do next? Do I just want to enter the workforce? And it was a Christian company, and I am a Christian. So I thought, well, that's great. That works out. I can get on board with their mission. And so I thought, fine, I'll audition. Auditions were late in May, and I was kind of a local girl, so went to my audition on my own, auditioned. Jeanette Cliff George, founder and first artistic director, was there. Rick Hodgen was there. I believe Kevin Dean was in my audition, but I'm not 100% sure. A couple other company members who aren't with us anymore. Auditioned for the internship. Got the internship. Didn't start until September. But meanwhile, as I'm there at the Old Grace Theater, I see everyone else coming for their audition slots, a couple other people in the lobby, but I noticed this older couple there. And I'm thinking, okay, someone has brought their parents to their audition. How lame is that? Again, I'm a sophisticated local Houston girl.
Yeah.
Grown up and go to my own auditions. As
you do.
Like you do, right? And I'm like, this is weird. Who brings their parents, both of them, to an audition? And I see this guy walk out into the lobby. He's obviously done. I had the slot right after him. He goes up. They're his parents. I'm like, okay, how lame. What a loser. So
I'm just going to cut all these sound bites together and put them, and then I'll send it. But
so I go in, I audition, I get my acceptance letter not too long after that, maybe a week or so, have the summer to kill, start Tuesday after Labor Day, the following September. And of course, I walk in, we're attending company meeting. That's our first thing that we do. We're going to company meeting Tuesday morning. And I see this kid who was there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, I mean, he must be a good actor. Like, even if he is kind of a loser, like, I mean, he got in, Yeah. So we meet that day. I'm now married to that guy.
Yep. And there it is. And the other
For 13 years now, I have been married to Jason Hatcher. So we interned together, got to be friends, dated, got married in 2010. So that's what brought me to the Players and what kept me at the Players. He resigned here and started teaching. And then I took a couple years off, had my daughter in that time, came back to that half season that we had in between the Grace Theater and moving into the George. So we did a hybrid season in 16-17 where the first 2 shows were at Grace and the last 3 shows were at the George. So that was the year that I came back on part-time and then full-time that season. So I was in one of the last shows at the Grace Theater. My husband and I had been in Smoke on the Mountain previously, and that was one of the shows they wanted to do last at Grace. And so we were in the last production of Smoke on the Mountain that we did before we did this one this summer.
This year.
At Grace together. And that is the last time we've been on stage together. So it has like a soft spot. I have a soft spot for that show and for being able to be on stage at Grace for the last time. And then we moved over here and we opened this building in February of 2017. So now at the George, I've been the production manager. And then as Jake Speck transitioned out and Jamie came on board, I was promoted to the general manager. So
Okay.
I've been the GM for a little over a year now.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to make sure I got your title right. I knew that when I
Yes.
started, it was general manager,
Yes.
but I know we all kind of went through a title
yeah.
shift, and I was like,
Yeah.
you're still the general
I
manager.
am still the general
Okay, good.
manager. Yes.
Got it, guys. Got
That's
it.
the newest iteration.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sure down the line it'll change again. Into
Probably.
something.
I mean, I'm really
Because
just
keeps
Kat, you know,
piling on.
like,
Yeah. We have a cat. We have our, she
Yeah.
handles everything.
yeah.
Any questions?
I don't know. It's Kat.
You
Go
got
ahead.
her.
Yeah.
Have either of you or your husband been on stage since Grace?
No.
So not together or just
No.
in your own?
No, Jason started teaching. This is his 11th year teaching. And he was in a couple shows after he started teaching, which was crazy hard on his schedule, having to be up so early to teach school and then rehearsals and performances. That was tough.
Yeah.
And both of those were before we had our daughter.
Mhm.
So our daughter was born in 2015. She just turned 8. Yeah, no.
Wow. Do you
No,
miss
neither
it?
one of us. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Jason does too. I know Jason does. You know, it's a season of life thing. People
Yeah.
still ask me, like, hey, are you going to be back on stage? Are you going to act again? I'm like, you know, maybe. Like,
Mhm.
when the time is right. That show that we were in at Grace, Smoke on the Mountain, Evelyn was just over a year old. She was about
Wow.
15, 16 months old when we did that. So we were gone a lot, but she has no memory of that.
Yeah.
And the older she got, it got harder to think about being gone for a whole rehearsal process or all of the run of a show. And then again, with him teaching, it got to be difficult. So, and then also double dipping for me, being the PM and then also being a cast member would have been difficult. You can't really manage the production when you're in the production. It's hard to, you know, have
Separate
that perspective.
self.
Right. You can't be out there watching and looking at everything because you're in it and focused on just your piece. So people do it, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but for me at the time in the season of life, it was like, okay, this is probably the better option for me, is just to focus on the administrative production and administrative piece, and we'll get back to the acting when or if the time is right. So, yeah.
When you, I don't know if you clarified or not, when you got the internship or when you first saw the flyer for the internship, was it an acting internship?
It was.
Okay.
Well, I say that.
Because I know the internship was different back then.
The internship has gone through many iterations. What the internship used to be was almost like Jack Jill of all trades kind of a situation, which was perfect for me because as Jesse, your boss, likes to joke, I'm just generally involved in everything.
Yeah.
You know, it is the classic, you know, Jack of all trades, master of none. Like that's me. So it was perfect for me to think, okay, there could be a performance aspect, but you're also going to get a little bit of exposure to all the other aspects and facets of a theater and what makes a not-for-profit theater run, and then more specifically, a not-for-profit theater that has a ministry, missional aspect to it. And so I believe I have like formally worked in most of the departments in the company. I've never officially been a marketer. Or
we can change that.
I'm sure.
Would you like to help out?
I know how to run a mean Zubu booth. Okay,
great.
I will.
This year, I mean, next year we'll do it. It's too late for this year, but next year we'll get it. We'll
get us
together.
out at Zubu, and I am your girl.
We have to come up with a new mascot. We gotta get everything made.
The George G. He can be an animated George G.
Oh, we should just do that.
Yeah, big foam George G.
That wouldn't be difficult
with
at all.
attitude. He could have eyeballs and a bow tie. He could dress up in all costumes. And I don't think I've ever officially formally worked in development.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah.
That's fascinating.
So the internship was a very general, generic. Now you could have a preference. You could be a theater technician. You could be a stage manager. You could just be a performer. But those of us who said we were performers, we were the ones who actually got spread around the most.
okay.
you can talk to a couple other company members. Like Hannah came in as the stage management intern. All she did was stage manage.
Okay.
Jason also came in as a performer. He has his BFA from Auburn, but he worked in the scene shop. He worked in the electrics shop. You know, he did a bunch of props and paint and things like that when he wasn't in rehearsal or on stage. When we had the children's theater, we rehearsed during the day and we performed during the day primarily. But the main stage still rehearsed at night and performed at night. So if you were in a main stage show, you still had your whole work day that needed to be filled up. So you were in the scene shop, you were in the box office, you were teaching a theater arts class, you know, academy class. You were doing a lot of other stuff during the day, in addition to performing. But yeah, it was a pretty generic internship, and it was a year long. So it was the whole season. Right now, our internship program is focused on these smaller, like 12 week, semester long chunks, you know, fall semester, spring semester, summer, you know. It was a season long internship. So you typically started in August or September, and then you would run through the end of the following season. So our main stage shows, if you were going to be in a main stage show right off the bat, you'd probably need to start in August to get in your rehearsal period before performance. And then the season effectively would be over, you know, end of July, right? But it was an 11 to 12 month internship.
Wow.
For everyone. And then we taught classes, again, fall semester, spring semester, summer classes. So if you were like a theater ed intern and you were really interested in working with kids and teaching theater to kids, you were also working all year long. We had satellite classes, we had on-campus classes, and we had a full docket. So you could be busy, for the whole 11 to 12 months of your internship. So and we also had a touring unit at that time. So a lot of the performance interns would also take a turn on the touring unit. And so they would tour, and that was more concentrated to the school year. Not as much touring over the summer, but we would tour to schools during the school year. And then Christmas touring was super heavy. It was a super busy season because we would tour to churches primarily.
So for anybody out there who doesn't know what you're saying by touring, like
yes, we would
theater.
take the baby show to them. And I say baby show because, you know, this is usually a 45 to 60 minute long piece, you know, so, and production value is high, but streamlined. Okay. So, you know, it's not a full set, you know, you're working in front of a backdrop with furniture and hand props. Typically, you know, maybe a little more infrastructure than that. But especially with touring to schools, you're often performing like in a cafetorium or a gym. You know, you don't have the infrastructure of what you would have at the George or even back at Grace. So, and you're essentially needing to pack all of this up and fit it in like a 12-passenger van.
Whoa, okay.
So, you know, you have a cast of anywhere from touring shows could be 2 people to 4 to 6 people, you know? So you've got to fit the bodies and then everything you need in essentially like a 12-passenger Ford van. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're setting it up, performing, tearing it down, striking it back to the van, and, you know, driving back to your home base. So touring. We've toured all over the country, primarily regionally, you know, within the greater Houston area was where, you know, we did the bulk of our performances. But the 80 Players has a very long, you know, and storied touring unit. It fell off a little bit when COVID hit, obviously, because even doing things like school assemblies became extremely difficult. You know, they weren't getting everybody together in closed, confined spaces. So like getting everyone in the gym or the cafetorium became less of a possibility. And then a lot of these churches who used to have us come in, they developed their own drama ministries. You know, they started producing what they had been using us for. They started producing that internally. And so touring just, I think, took a little bit of a nosedive because there wasn't as much of a market for it as there had been historically. So we're no longer touring. But much like the education piece. I think we hope to get back to not necessarily touring, but programming for young audiences. So theater for young audiences, which was what touring the bulk of it was, 75% of it was for kids. Christmas touring was for families, let's say. So kids, everything was totally appropriate for you to bring your family to. You could have an 8-year-old in the audience, no problem. It wasn't necessarily geared specifically toward them, but it would be a family event, and all of it was consumable by a young audience. So
I hope that we get back there.
Oh, we will.
Yeah.
We will.
you have the plan
I'm confident.
already.
Yeah, I'm confident.
Pull out the 5-year schedule.
Yeah.
On this date.
There's always a desire and a want for that. I'm a parent.
Yeah.
You're always looking to expose your kids to, different experiences, the arts, most parents, I would venture to say, want their kids to be well-rounded and to have those experiences. They want to take them to the zoos and the museums and the aquariums and the theater and the parks and the this and the that, because it's, it's something to do. It fills the day, but it also just enriches their experience. And it causes them to be in situations where they have to really, practice social skills.
Yeah.
And, you need to develop that, that sense of empathy, that sense of compassion, that sense of community, and theater does that for kids.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that every kid who sits and watches a show is going to want to be on stage or want to work in the theater,
no, of
but
course.
they consume that experience the same way adults do.
Yeah.
And it's good for us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good for us. It's healthy for us. And so I think there will always be a market for programming for young audiences, and then also theater education. The thing that theater education teaches you is, again, not necessarily how to be a performer, but it teaches you things like collaboration and teamwork and compromise and sharing and creativity, and that everyone's ideas are equal and valid and cool and can be explored, and you work together to create something. It teaches listening. It teaches empathy. It teaches compassion. It teaches all of these things because in the theater, the common goal is the play. You want to put on the play. And you want people to watch that and take it in and, be entertained and enjoy it, But getting there, the process of that product, the process is where the magic happens, Yeah, their parents are going to come and they're going to see it and they're going to love it. But what did that student learn in getting to that piece? That's where the value is for me.
No, of course.
So
that's so fascinating. I have 2 things to kind of branch off of this. So, I went to a really small high school, and so I didn't grow up in a theater like world or film world or any kind of drama, nothing like that. Very small. We barely had a sports team. But I think now, had I had that, I just wonder where my life, I'm happy with where I am, but I just wonder in what direction it would have gone. I think it's so fascinating. You talk about how you found 80 players. It was a flyer on a wall, and it just feels like happenstance. It just feels like what a coincidence. I had never seen live theater until a year ago, almost a year ago to the day. Yep. So when you're talking about like bringing your kids to the theater and being well-rounded, I'm like, I guess I'm not well-rounded. No.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we went to the zoos and we went to the museums and all those kinds of things, but never theater. That just wasn't a world that my family knew. And so it was about a year ago. Again, my roommate was in a show. I went and saw her. And then since then, it feels like every other weekend I'm going to see a show. And then I started working here and now I'm promoting the shows and I have a deeper appreciation for it. I think it's so fascinating how God works. I mean, that's
absolutely.
all I can.
No, absolutely. And, it is crazy to think about like seeing a flyer on a call board. And it does feel happenstance, but at the same time, I know it was ordained, and I think that is what you say, like what brought you to the George, what keeps you here. I didn't have a desire necessarily to run off to New York or LA or Chicago or any of the bigger regional theater markets. I've always had an affinity for small. I don't think there's anything wrong with being local, with being small with being focused. I don't think there's anything wrong with being big either. You know, obviously the bigger you are, the bigger your market, the more people you have the capacity to reach, you know. Meanwhile, there's stuff that's happening more locally. There's stuff that's happening grassroots. There's the stuff that, you know, you really pour into and invest in just this place, this community, this city, this greater Houston metro area, you know, and I'll include all that. I live out in Sugar Land, you know, not just to say like Houston city limits or just, you know,
no, not at all.
The Galleria area where the George lives, you know, it's more like this little pocket, this little corner of the world, you know, and even more micro for me, like this company, you know, you stay and you invest and you plant and you prune and you tend and it grows. Yeah. Right. But you have to be really intentional about that. And you have to commit. Like it's the long game. So for me, it's like the longer I stay, the more I can pour into this, the more will come out of it.
The deeper the roots.
The deeper the roots, the stronger the foundation. And all of those things get hung on that infrastructure, you know? So for me, it's like I'm perfectly happy right where God has me. Yeah. Which is, you know, small and local. I say small. Obviously, the George is not a small place.
No,
and, you know,
I find myself doing that too. Of like, oh, we're just a little underdog theater.
Right. We're not.
Like, no, we're really not.
Right.
Yeah,
we're not. I say small in comparison to, you know, again, the really big players in the regional
Broadway,
theater world.
I don't know.
You know, yeah, or even in the commercial world. Yeah. But even in the regional, you know, not-for-profit theater world, you know, we might still be on the smaller end of like the budget structure and an operating budget and things like that, you know. So that's what I mean when I say small. Yeah, I think I hear lots of stories of folks who come and they work with us for the first time and they have a great experience. And I'm like, that's it. That's what I'm striving toward, you know. That although our shows might not be the biggest, our cast sizes might occasionally be just 4 folks like they were for Plaid, you know. Those 4 guys had a great experience. Yeah. That's a success. Yeah. You know, maybe it wasn't a cast of 45. It was 4 of them, and they're understudies, you know. But if that handful of people had a great experience, then that's a success for me. And if they want to come back, that's the cherry on top, you know? And then if they'll tell all of their people like, hey, you need to go audition for them. You need to go work there. That place is amazing. Then, okay. You know, that's the ripple effect you're talking about. Yeah. So,
but I think it's fascinating. You bring up the other aspect of, I mean, obviously what theater is. I'm in the marketing, so I'm always trying to figure out outwardly, what can we do? What can we show? How can we bring people into the theater, see what we're doing? Whereas there's a whole other side to it of the people that we're hiring. They also are then having a view and experience of what the George is, and then they can go share that experience with other people. I didn't think of that.
I was talking to Lyrica, our development director, and, you know, kind of explaining like how I view my role here. And my role is not outward facing particularly. But I consider it to be just as important as the stuff that directly goes out, because indirectly, like I said, all those folks who are coming through our doors to work on our productions, they interact with me in my office on all of the mundane, boring things that no one sees and no one wants to talk about.
Some people, I find it fascinating.
Right. You don't see any of that work when you come and you sit in the house and you watch the show. And that's fine. That's as it should be. But what does go into that is that person's overall holistic experience here at the George. So when there's a hang up with paperwork or a paycheck, or there's a logistical situation that needs to be worked out with housing, or, I mean, the examples go on. And we treat everybody with that priority of, hey, we want to make your experience with us at the George, with this production, the best that it can be. That's what really, I think, impacts people. And they feel they feel valued and cared for as a whole person, not just for what they can bring to the stage.
Yeah.
You know, it's all the other little stuff. They're running late. Something unfortunate happens in their personal life. Their dryer breaks.
Yeah.
Would you like to use our laundry room?
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like, hey, when you're here, we're going to take care of you, you know, across the board. We value your health. We value your family. We value what else you have going on in your life. You're not just a commodity to us. You're not just a product. And so that is love, right? Kind of being able to meet people where they are and say, hey, you have a need, you have a thing, you have a problem, you have a question. I'm going to prioritize that. I'm going to take care of it for you, you know? And obviously, by nature of priority, only one thing can be a priority at a time. You know, you do have to kind of structure it. And, you know, the bigger the cast, the more people, the more problems, the more issues, the more questions, concerns need to get addressed. But being able to say, hey, I am here for the internal piece of this, because all those internal pieces eventually do go external. And what you don't ever want is, you're working so hard to message our product and our shows and what we have going on. What you and I are on the same team, because I'm taking care of the plaid guys while you're marketing their show. If I'm not doing my job, I'm undermining yours, you know?
Yeah.
Because they're out there going like, man, I mean, the show's fine, but that place stinks, you know? Like, nothing's ever answered. Nothing's ever taken care of. Nothing's ever clear, communicated well, anything like that, you know? And so they're out there in the world saying, I haven't had a great experience at the George. The show might be amazing.
Yeah.
You might be working your butt off to market it. But now we're at cross purposes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Heads. Yeah. No, I completely understand.
And so I'm like, that's my end of the bargain. I have to uphold that end for the integrity of the company, for the sake of what folks are saying out there in the world. Not to mention, I just enjoy it.
No,
I enjoy
of
caring for them.
Yeah.
You know,
there's an interpersonal relationship.
There's
there.
an interpersonal relationship there. There's friends that I've met here because they've come through. I would not have met them were it not for them coming to work at the George. 80 players at Grace was very insular. 80 players at the George is very open. It's very welcoming. Come on, work with us. Come have fun with us. Come create with us. We're going to do this together. And we are going to work for something that we can all be proud of, you know? And so I'm a process girl over a product girl, which is not to say that I don't want the product to be excellent, but I actually don't believe that you can get excellent product without excellent process.
Yeah.
I don't think so. So it's that whole, do the ends justify the means justify the ends kind of a thing, you know? And it's like, well, you know, not in like a Machiavellian kind of way, you know, like I'm not manipulating anything, but again, your product can be great, but if your process stinks, is your product really as great as you think it is?
Yeah.
Because what have you,
cost?
And what potential have you left on the table? You know, like you're saying it's great, but did you really go all in on the process to make it as great as it could be? You might not know, you know? So to me, the process of that and caring for folks and, you know, meeting needs and just conducting, you know, work with integrity and professionalism and all that, like that is part of what goes out there into the world outside of the George doors. So yeah, it's important to me. And I enjoy it. Like I said, I've met a ton of people that I would not have otherwise met and some that have become very good friends. So, and when they come back and they work on the next show, it's like a reunion, you know? So yeah, it's fun.
I want to ask you, I think we've danced around it. And I think everything that you've just said, it aids to it or adds to it is, what does it mean to you to work at a Christian theater company? Yeah.
Obviously what we put out there blatantly that needs to be on message and on mission is incredibly important. You know, do I want to do Christmas programming that tells the story of Christ's birth? Yes. Coming incarnate in the flesh to the world to save us. Absolutely. Do I love that we've brought back Easter programming, talking about his resurrection? Absolutely. So those things. Do I also, like Jamie said, just want to produce and consume stories that have messages of hope and joy and redemption? Absolutely. You know, those themes are Christian by their very nature,
Mhm.
you know? They speak to a story that's bigger than us.
Mhm.
They touch like what we most long for, what we most need, what we most crave. You know, C.S. Lewis has the quote, and I'm going to paraphrase it and butcher it, but he says, if you find yourself longing for something that this world cannot satisfy, it's because you are made for something out of this world.
Mm.
You are looking for something otherworldly, because there's nothing here, earthly, that's going to quench that.
Mhm.
Again, a wretched paraphrase. Look it up.
No.
But do I want to do that? Absolutely. Do I think that we could do all the Christmas and Easter stories we wanted, but if we don't treat everyone that we work with that sense of love and care and concern and priority, and we value them because they are made in the image of God, because they are people and they are important to Him, and therefore they are important to us,
Mhm.
then I think, again, we're working at cross purposes.
Mhm.
So what it means to me to work at a Christian theater is, yes, to be able to say those things blatantly, outright in the world with no shame,
Mhm.
but it also means that the place that I work supports how I treat people,
Mhm.
how I do my work,
Mhm.
how I communicate to people, what I say, and how I say it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, my mom used to say growing up, when I would have like sharp words or a bad attitude, you know, she would say, it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. You know, what you're saying can be fine, but the how is what hits people.
Mhm.
The how is what make people either go, I'm not going to listen to you,
Yeah.
or I have a soft heart, you know, towards this because it's coming at me, to me, in a way that I can consume, I can deal with, I can take in.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, you know, it means really pouring into those relationships and creating something that is almost unbreakable, you know, like
Yeah.
is solid, it's strong.
I love that. I could listen. I could talk to you all day because I think
Aw, thank
we're
you.
the same person.
Okay.
I think we're the exact same person. From everything that you do and you manage, and that you genuinely enjoy it. I mean, there's some people who, I mean, and that's okay. To each their own. Everybody has their own cup of tea. Spreadsheets are like my cup of tea,
I know.
and managing, and exactly,
I love them.
Exactly. But then also the fact that it's not just that. You're not just a robot who's punching in numbers, but you're also like, it's this personal relationship, and it's the relationship that you cultivate with people. And I love that. And then again, what you say, and it's more of a fact of how you say it. I struggle with that every day. I know that I can come off pretty harsh sometimes. And I'm always trying to find those moments of, okay, what's the better way to say this? Or how can I, in my tone, make this come across easier? Right. And so you talk about, and I'm just like, we're the same person. I'm just a little bit later. I'm just a couple years behind. Okay. I've taken up a lot of your time.
Yes, no worries.
I want to ask my two final, lightning round questions.
Okay.
You know it's coming. I think you do.
Do I? Okay.
Maybe.
All right.
Have you listened to previous episodes? No.
Okay.
You've performed. You are a performer. I want to know what is the biggest mistake, pratfall, that you've had mishap that's happened on stage. So like for Forever Plaid, I asked, like, you know, Jinx has a nosebleed on stage, and Jamie was talking about throwing the lit torch out into the audience.
Oh my word.
I want to hear your story.
Okay. I don't know that it was necessarily a mistake that I made. I'm going to call out a whole cast of people.
Whoa, okay.
Okay. So we did a show back at Grace called Leaving Iowa, and it was about a family on a road trip. Essentially, it's a memory play.
Okay.
The son is kind of remembering all these road trips he took with his family. The dad has passed away. Okay. And so this is the framing device for the memory play. I played the sister. So it was a family, mom, dad, a son, and a daughter. I was the girl. Okay, so this is Rick Hodgen, Patty Toole Bailey, Chip Simmons, Lee Walker.
Everybody.
I'm naming them all, and Sarah Cooksey. She's now married, different last name, but and myself. Okay, so it's a cast of 6 people, And there is a line in the play where we talk about, we're in the car and we want to go see this like side attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about that it's a cave, it's ghost caverns, and you're going to walk through these caves. And there's apparently wild animals in the caves. Okay. So one of these lines, and it's my line, has the phrase wild animals. Have you ever been part of a group of people where like all of a sudden you just all get tickled by the same thing all at once? Okay. And then you just can't get out of it. You just cannot get out of it. So we are on stage. I say my line. Rick somehow goes up on his next line. He can't think of what to say. Oh, no. And he just randomly kind of inserts the phrase wild animals into his next line. We all know that's not part of his line, right? So it was almost like telepathy. Like all of us just decide we're going to try to say the phrase wild animals as many times as we possibly can. Gosh. Okay. In this next sequence of lines. Sarah and Lee weren't even on stage at the time. It was the four of us, but they can hear us. And so we just keep saying wild animals just over and over again in the most kind of bizarre context, you know? And we are all, just this close to breaking character and losing it, right? But we keep going. Meanwhile, our stage manager in the booth is not happy.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's not Hannah, by the way. It was a guest stage manager.
That's fine. We can make somebody else
fine, right? And we just go on and on. Well, finally, Lee has an entrance. And so he comes on and he's been listening to all of this and he works wild animals into his line. And I think collectively at that point, we were like, okay, we got to stop, you know? So we get off stage and just finally lose it. But that is one of the funniest, we got fussed at. Our stage manager came back and was like, that was the most unprofessional. I couldn't follow it. You were changing all the lines. I had cues. And we're like, yeah, we know.
But we had fun.
But we weren't even really sorry about it.
Okay. We're coming up on our Christmas show.
Yes.
It is the season of tradition.
Yes.
We've been talking, the marketing team, how we can advertise, how we can play on this idea of tradition more. And so I want to ask you, coming up into this holiday season, we got Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. What is one of your favorite traditions during this holiday time? Okay,
so we don't do it anymore, unfortunately, but my dad is one of 8. And so he had 7 brothers and sisters. All of them lived here except for the one. And every Christmas Eve, his second oldest brother would host a huge lasagna dinner at his house. So just, pans and pans and pans of lasagna and salad and garlic bread. And my dad's family is Catholic, and so they would stay at his house late enough to go to midnight mass on Christmas Eve. And we would go over there, and then my aunt's family was invited too. And she is one of 14. So all of her brothers and sisters and their kids were invited. And so this little bitty house out in Southwest Houston was just packed to the gills with people. And my grandparents were there and lasagna was there. And it was like, that was Christmas to me.
Yeah.
Gosh. And my grandparents are both gone now. And for a little while, we did it at my uncle, his oldest daughter, decided to host it. And it just got to be so much, there's so many of us now. I was one of 20 grandkids. And so we're all married. We have our own families. We have kids. We have in-laws. It just got to be logistically kind of like, gosh, know. And so eventually she said, this has got to be my last year, But my dad had this bottle of Chanel cologne that he would only wear on Christmas Eve. And so you know how they say like scents are so linked to memory.
Yeah, powerful.
So like Christmas to me is lasagna and the smell of that cologne, and like that was our tradition for so long. And we went to my mom's parents the next day on Christmas morning, and we went back to my grandparents' house the next day, Christmas afternoon and evening. And, Christmas Day was amazing. It was so much fun. And I had lots of good memories of that day, but like Christmas Eve will always be, the most special. And so now I make my own little lasagna on Christmas Eve.
That's wonderful.
So I didn't expect to cry. Sorry.
No, but thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I really,
yeah.
That's a wonderful tradition.
So, and I've looked for the cologne, but I can't find it. Like, it's one of those things, like, I mean, I'm almost 40. So, you know, this cologne is like, I don't know, 25 years old, you know, and it's one of those things. I'm sure it's on eBay somewhere, but I haven't been able to track it down. So
that's what my mom does. I mean, she has a perfume that she's worn her entire life, and all she does now is purchase it on eBay because you can't find it anywhere else.
Yep.
So that's my childhood. But no, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
That.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I didn't want to take up much more of your
No
time.
worries. You're good.
Well, this has been By George, an 80 Players podcast here at the George Theater. I'm Miranda, and this is Kat, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye, y'all.
This has been By George, an 80 Players at the George Theater podcast, hosted and produced by Miranda Zapes. Listen anywhere you listen to podcasts and follow us on Instagram at By George Theater. That's THEATRE. Sure to like, share, and subscribe. And By George, we'll see y'all next time.
So it was a really fun show. It was a summer show. It was the summer right before Jason and I got married. And
wonderful.
It was a really fun show. And I guess that memory is like fresh on my mind because Christy's husband, Joey, just produced that show out at his high school.
Oh.
And so we went to go see it. And it was a really great production. Their daughter was in it. And so, yeah, that was just one of those, like, again, you just you just have that like kind of bubble moment. You couldn't create it even if you wanted to. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things that just happens. And like, that's live theater.
I love it. That's the best.
So.
I saw a TikTok the other day where it was like the closing of a musical and the cast was playing. I love this. I love seeing the behind, because I'm not a performer, so I don't know what happens on stage. But to see like the little games that people play or like doing that. So it was the closing of the musical. And so everybody is trying to make the cast break, but you're also trying not to break.
Yeah.
And so like there's people in the wings like doing crazy dances while people are on stage.
There's almost no better feeling in the world than like needing to laugh and wanting to laugh and know that you can't. And so like it's that duality of it. Like it's like there's no other real feeling like that where you know you're not supposed to. And that just makes it funnier.